In the name of Chris Oakenfold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Environment and reads, what advice has the Minister received regarding the need to streamline and simplify the Resource Management Act?
Speaker,
Nick Smith.
there is a very strong consensus across the public and private sector that reform of the Resource Management Act is long overdue. The advice of the Ministry for the Environment, the Department of Conservation, the Department of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, the Ministry of Economic Development, the Ministry of Fisheries, the Ministry of Transport, the New Zealand Transport Authority, TPK and Treasury all supported substantive reform. Local Government New Zealand and numerous councils have also strongly advocated for change. There has been a similar chorus from private sector organisations representing the farming, forestry, fishing, manufacturing, construction and tourism industries. There has also been comments from environmental organisations like the Environment Defence Society that has acknowledged the need for reform. Many of these groups noted their frustration that the previous government refused to heed such advice.
Parliamentary.
Chris Oakenfold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister. Has the Minister received any reports on the time it takes for councils to write or change their resource management plans?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Nick Smith.
Yes, I have. The latest report is from October 2008. It identified that after 17 years since the passage of the Resource Management Act, we still have 5 councils that do not have an operative plan. It further showed that the average time to complete the planning process under the existing law was 8.2 years. I know that this is the average and that the current law requires a complete plan review after 10 years that they become operative. The process for plan amendments is similarly cumbersome, with the average time being just over 3 years.
The Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
Supplementary to the Minister. Does the Minister really believe that community participation in the resource consent process causes unnecessary delays? If not, what guarantee can the Minister give community groups that their access to participate in the decision-making process will not be limited by the proposed changes to the RMA?
The Honourable Nick
Mr.
Smith.
Speaker, the government has been quite upfront and saying that there needs to be a careful balance between community participation and the need to make efficient decision-making. And when it takes over 8 years for a council to make a plan, this government makes no apologies for saying that is too slow and that those processes need to be changed.
Chris Oakenfold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister. Is the Minister aware of examples where the environment has been seriously compromised by the cumbersome planning processes of the RMA?
Mr. Speaker.
Nick Smith.
Yes, I am. Most MPs would acknowledge that freshwater management has been poor, particularly in Canterbury, where it has been under very significant pressure. Environment Canterbury first issued a draft regional policy plan on water in 1994, but got stuck in multiple rounds of public consultation until it was notified in 2004. This has triggered more than 8,000 submissions, and those hearings are not due to be completed till the end of this year, in which it's expected to then face multiple appeals. The earliest likely time the water plan will become operative is 2013, 20 years after the process began. I'm bewildered that the very opposition MPs who are calling for an improvement in water management practice oppose the very measures that will enable us to make those improvements.
Point of order, the Honourable Annette King.
Mr. Speaker, I timed that answer. It was 1 minute long. Answers are supposed to be.
Order.
That is against standing orders. And if the government wants to clap when they break standing orders, it's not acceptable to this side of the House. A short answer is required under standing orders.
The member has raised a perfectly valid point, and senior members in the government know they should not be making noise during a point of order. The Honourable Minister has been giving fairly lengthy answers, but they have been very informative, I will acknowledge, that. And given the House significant information, but I would ask if he could just be a little more brief. The next supplementary question. Point of order, the Honourable Rodney Hyde.
I timed that point of order and your response, and that was 1 minute and 10 seconds. And if the opposition are keen to progress matters, they'd actually sit down and listen to the answers for a change.
Point of order, the Honourable Dr Michael Cullen.
That is a bit rich. You may have noticed, Mr Speaker, that since the change of government, question time is taking a lot less than the time it used to. One half of the reason for that is Mr Hyde no longer raising points of order. The other half is no longer with us.
Order. Order. I think there is no... Everyone understands the importance, including me, of brevity for the House to get on. I call Chris Okenvoll on a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister assure me and the House that his reforms will address the problem faced by my constituents in Buller District, where a protest group acts irresponsibly in trying to block a council decision, has costs awarded against it by the Environment Court, and just winds up its incorporated society, leaving a bill of thousands of dollars for ratepayers?
The Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, yes, the member highlights a very real problem that has also cost the ratepayers of Western Bay of Plenty $300,000 and ratepayers in Otago more than $250,000. I note opposition parties have cried foul over the proposal to allow the Environment Court to require security of costs, saying that this undermines the fundamental right to be able to object and appeal. But these parties seem to have no regard for the ratepayers who actually end up having to pay the bill.
We come supplementary, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is the Minister aware of the recent Environment Court decision regarding the Waitakere Ranges and the Waitakere City Council, whereby the Environment Court ensured that there were much fewer subdivisions, a large number fewer subdivisions in the Waitakere Ranges, hence protecting the Waitakere Ranges for the people of Auckland and protecting the environment. And that was only possible because you could appeal the district plan to the Environment Court, and what he's doing is taking away the right to do those kind of actions, to take that kind of appeal.
The Honourable Nick Smith.
The reality as you change appeal rights is that it cuts both ways. That is, yes, it is true. Some appeals that environmental groups would want to pursue will be constrained, but equally so too will appeals from developers who want to proceed. I note that the Mayor of Waitakere City, Bob Harvey, ex-President of the Labor Party, who is very passionate about protection of the Waitakere Ranges, has strongly endorsed the government's reform package because he thinks they will work better for areas like the Waitakere Ranges.
Dr Russell Norman.
To the Minister, does the Minister realise that in that case the Environment Court overruled the Waitakere City Council plan because they wanted to have a certain number of subdivisions and the Environment Court said you had to have less? So it's not surprising that the Mayor might support the kind of changes you're making, whereas what surely we want on both sides and in this House is to protect the environment and protect the Waitakere Ranges, which means giving community groups the right to challenge district plans when they undermine environmental values.
Dr Nick Smith, if you can make sense of that question.
Mr Speaker, the trade-off...
Point of order, Materia Toure.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I would just like to maybe seek your advice on your comment, sir. I understand you have been a very fair speaker, and I think everyone across the House recognises that you've done a very good job, but I found that comment unnecessary from you and that it undermines your role as the manager of this House for good behaviour.
I thank the honourable member for her genuine point. The point I was making, and I accept perhaps I was unfair, the point I was making is that the member should be asking a question, not making a small speech. And he made a significant speech there that would make it extremely difficult for a minister to give a sensible answer to such a question. The point I was trying to make, it's just as a point of order was raised before about the length of the Honourable Nick Smith's answers, which I agree were a bit long, but he was informative and clear in what he was saying. Questions also need to be brief and to the point, and that question went way too long. I was on the point of actually standing and sitting the member down simply because the question went on and on. The Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the government's intent in the reforms is about reducing the times and delays of the resource consenting process and not changing the overall balance between development and the environment, and for that reason we are not making any changes to the key tests that are provided for in Part 2 of the Resource Management Act.